has happened when Haiti has been an occupied country going back to 1915 and U.S. occupation that went from 1915 to 1934, where you literally had Haitian peasants who were returned to semi-slavery in the corvée system to have wealth extracted from the country. When you had Citibank basically extracting money directly from the coffers of the Haitian financial sector, the Haitian gold reserves that were once used to pay back its indemnity to France. Let's talk about how when MINUSTA was in Haiti during the period of the earthquake, they literally dumped feces into the Artibonite River that caused a cholera epidemic while soldiers from those encampments were raping young Haitian girls and Haitian women. It's not a pretty picture of what happens in Haiti when foreign powers come in and occupy the country. And what we've also seen is that it doesn't bring any kind of resolution to the endemic ongoing problems of political destabilization that the country has faced going back, I would say, to the fall of the Papa Doc regime in 1986. The thing that we have to understand about Haiti is that Haiti is a country that has factions of individuals divided by class and economic and material interests that go back to the Haitian Revolution that have not been resolved largely because the political will of the people gets blunted every time there's an attempt to democratically place a force in power that resolves their challenges to the oppressive lifestyle that they've been placed in for over 200 years. And part of the problem is that Western powers have aligned themselves either for economic reasons or for geostrategic reasons with those forces that have been able to put a cap on the aspirations of the majority of Haitian people in order to maintain what they consider security. And my position is simply is that I'm very sympathetic to the demands people have for security. But what has been the track record in the past?
It's confusing because, okay, I'm just really trying to keep all these moving pieces straight. If again, these gangs and the instability that they're causing is in some ways not even possible, at least to this extent, without being sourced by some outside funding, whether it's the elite political class or kind of mercantile class in Haiti or the United States. What is the expectation from U.S. intervention? If they're already on some level, I guess that I'm asking, pulling the strings, then what's the goal of the United States in having boots on the ground?
One of the things that the goal is to make sure that whatever the next political administration that is controlling the affairs of Haiti is put in power is in line with what the State Department and the core group of associated embassies want to make sure happens.
So you think there's an acknowledgement and acceptance that Ariel Henry is on his way out and that they're just in the process of picking somebody new as that will like pacify the...
Based on the nature of his mandate, I think there's no question he's going to be out at some point. The question is on what terms and in terms of who's going to replace him when that becomes the case. I think there's no question that's the reality. But I think that the United States is more interested in how the country is governed after Ariel Henry that is willing to let itself be held on to. Don't forget, there's other interests the United States has. Whenever there's instability in Haiti, there's immigration issues and all kinds of instability that goes about in terms of its neighbors. It's not exactly appealing to the administration of Joe Biden that you have uproar in Haiti during his presidency when he's trying to, calm the nerves during the midterms.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, the immigration implications are real. I mean, we all remember the moment where we saw the immigration officers on horseback with reins in hand, chasing down a Haitian immigrant. Obviously, there was a whole kind of misinformation media cycle about that person actually being whipped. But whip or no, the imagery specifically, I think, of a Black immigrant being treated on camera the way that in the public imagination, obviously a lot of immigrants are Black, but in the I think 1 out of every 6. But in the public imagination, Latino immigrants are typically treated, I think, pulled in a level of critique from Black Americans, a key part of Joe Biden's voter base, who were paying attention to that in a way that might not ordinarily have happened. And he got a lot of pushback for that. And there's been, I think, some scrutiny on how Haitian immigrants have been treated in the United States as a consequence. And so you think that Joe Biden's, the awkwardness, the optics failures of him having to face a large wave of Haitian immigrants and being pressured by his base on some level to be sympathetic to them and accepting, and then the right wing push, obviously, to
I think this creates a situation where the politics of the ground makes him, what choices do I have here? I don't think that Joe Biden necessarily looking forward to a long-term U.S. occupation in Haiti right now per se, but I think that he is worried about the political fallout from what is going on in this crisis situation, where he may actually seriously consider occupying the country to maintain what he perceives as a form of security. And I'm completely opposed to U.S. occupation of Haiti on any terms whatsoever because I understand what it's brought forth in the past and understand that it's never done in anything but bring forth abuse and mistreatment to the Haitian people.
It's crazy to me to think that Joe Biden would want to be involved in this situation, to be honest. Like, as much as you can anticipate a certain degree of backlash on an immigration front, he got so many accolades from the people, not from the media class, obviously, but from the people for the Afghanistan withdrawal. If there's anything that he's done that gives him any foreign policy bona fides, it's having more restraint in that respect than other presidents. And now he's already dug himself in the hole with Russia, Ukraine. The idea that he would want to be involved in this, if not absolutely being compelled to do so, I just don't understand the calculation from the U.S. perspective, unless I'm missing, and I probably am, missing something significant about what America stands to gain from having control over the country.
Well, I think that the United States has always felt that the capacity of Haiti as a country to govern itself was a threat to the overall maintenance of power projection in space, because there is an historical narrative. You have the first slave rebellion, successful slave rebellion in the Western Hemisphere. Haiti has always been a country that has needed to be put under control because of its history. Because in the narrative of the history carries a certain type of weight to it that threatens, frankly, the existence of the United States. We don't want these black and brown folk feeling that they can rebel, similarly to Cuba, and be able to have sovereignty against the normatives of international capital and finance. So Haiti has paid a price for that determination historically, and it's also something that had to be dealt with in terms of its ability to navigate the realities and the terrain it was in the 19th century when it got its independence, particularly when you're dealing with the fact that the majority of the Western Hemisphere was still involved in slave plantation.
Oh, that's not what I heard, Pascal. After the Queen died, I heard a lot of discourse about how we weren't supposed to be mad about colonialism because England was the very first country ever to end slavery.
Yeah, people don't realize that there's a correlation between the Haitian Revolution and the ending of slavery as well, but yeah, that's really interesting. Wilberforce was in constant conversation with Henry Christophe. I hear that when people talk about the end of slavery.
Yeah, I'm sure you got into some very interesting debates in the days after the Queen's death.
That whole period of time was really fascinating to me, the conversations that people were having about the Queen and the role of the British monarchy. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that Americans are so interested in the British monarchy. I was like, why are people so obsessed with that? I mean,
What do you make of it?
I think there's a certain kind of allure that royalty has to folks that resonates. Even in a modern liberal democratic country that we're supposed to be in America, people still find something interesting about the royal family and the Queen and all of this stuff. I definitely think the Meghan Markle factor was a very, very effective media tool in terms of getting Black and brown folk invested into the enterprise as well. But I look at the British Empire as an empire. Empires are something to be fought, not to be admired. That's part of being a part of the left.
Yeah, well, being in the space of Rising, where I am kind of regularly engaged with people with very different political backgrounds for me, made it a situation where it was very clear that people feel a deep emotional investment in it without doing a lot of preamble about respecting the Queen as a human being who had a life and who has a family and who was loved by people and her intimates and not wanting to be disrespectful, yada, yada, yada. You could start to get into a conversation about not just what happened in some far off historical time, but literally under her reign. But the audience, a certain kind of audience, is just not at all receptive to it at all. And I don't know if it's Walt Disney's fault. I don't know what it is. And for Americans in particular, particularly like conservative Americans who say that they care a lot about autonomy and they think of America as this rebellious country. And it's like, go us, we fought the Revolutionary War, all of these kinds of things. To cape in this way for the royal family, it struck me as particularly incongruent for that.
Oh, you had Tucker Carlson talking about like the greatest hits of the British Empire. It was incredible to me. I was like, what do you do? How?
It's so bizarre. Like, don't mess with Texas, but also let's put the Queen on our money.
Yeah, I know. It just demonstrates the crisis of legitimacy we are facing in the current political moment. theme that we talk about on This Is Revolution podcast, the 50 plus year counter revolution, how basically most of American politics post the 60s has been a counter revolution against the new left of that period of time. And we've been increasing in the reactionary right wing nature of our politics bipartisanly. The key word is bipartisanly. How that void in time where people actually have an oppositional politics is so devoid from the American consciousness that people are just like celebrating the royal family. And I look at shows like I forgot,
The
but
Crown.
The Crown. Yeah, I watched some of The Crown, and I was like, this is disgusting, man. Watching Africans kissing this woman's feet when she's going to the continent. I was like, this is like degrading. How are people celebrating this nonsense?
Well, a lot of Black people in diaspora were part of the crowd that was very sad about the Queen's passing. They felt like her coming to these countries and dancing with them and treating them with quote unquote respect was uplifting and a credit to her and her liberalism as compared to some other monarchs of years past. There was a divide even among Black folks in the diaspora.
Yeah, I know because you've lived on the continent, so I'm sure you probably know a lot of people who have been under the control of the crown. That's some Stockholm syndrome, boy. I mean, I don't get that. We're a long way away from Eric Williams and all those great intellectuals who really centered the capitalism and slavery, talking about how the British Empire is basically money was made by slavery. That British capitalism is a product of slavery. I mean, we are a long way away from having those C.L.R. James, that caliber of Anglo-Caribbean intellectual, scholar, freedom fighter. Those years are a long gone away, and we're in a very, very dark time. I just feel fortunate that I was old enough to be mentored by people who were in that period in the 60s, people like Bruce Dixon and Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report, where I had the uncles that I had and came out of a kind of Marxist left tradition in radical Haitian politics, to be able to connect myself to that history, at least intellectually, so that I could avoid those pitfalls, because it's very sad to see the degree to which young people are intoxicated by the powers of empire.
Well, how much do you think it's a consequence of not really seeing an out? I mean, you mentioned a little while ago that you feel like we're caught up in this kind of counter reactionary cycle on both the left and the right. And I know I have my own critique of what the liberal left has been offering in terms of a kind of shallow identity politics and representational politics. And the right obviously does its own version with the woke culture wars. And it's just a culture battle that's happening over our head without any kind of material engagement. But what's your diagnosis and what you would like to see to get us out of it?
I would like to see us return to the good old days of political education, where we like literally just go out and talk to people about like what is governance, why can't you get what you want out of your government, and how can you demand more. I like the SNCC model. We actually go out and teach people how to interact with their government in terms of, I think we need to go into physically meet people in their places. I think this digital stuff that we're all trapped in has a certain limited effect. It only goes so far. Listen, I'm a podcaster. I do a podcast. I love your show. I think it's doing very valuable. I think political education of this sort has a limitation, but we have to have a human element to what we do to re-engage the spark that people have in their political imagination. There's a lack of political imagination in American society because the choices have been narrowed to bad and worse. And I think that what we need to do is to give people options. And to do that, we had to let them know that the machine allows you to have options in the first place.
With midterms coming up, do you think that moments like this are like a distraction, a pull back to focusing on these short-term electoral cycles? Or do you think that we should be engaging on some level with them to exploit them for whatever leverage exists? And
I think that we should always be willing to heighten the contradictions that people in power present in front of us, whether that be foreign policy in situations. Look, I mean, no one has a problem talking about how Ukraine and Russia is affecting oil prices and inflation in the United States. Does that mean that I should stop talking about how much U.S. policy towards Haiti is affecting people who are Black and brown in the Caribbean? No. I should use those moments to heighten the contradictions of how much U.S. empire and global empire works in ways that disenfranchises people who are on the margins. I think that that's the best of what our tradition on the left is about. That's the best that we have to offer. I think for some of us, we try, and some of us, we fall short. But there's no guarantee that we're going to win this fight. There's no guarantee. As a matter of fact, our goal shouldn't to do this because we want to win. We should do this because we're going to win. In other words, we shouldn't be expecting to win. We're doing this because we want to make the world a better place for people who are left on the outs. And we believe with conviction the things that we do, and we've got to advocate for them.
I certainly agree. It can be a little demoralizing and daunting, I think, because so many people came into this space because of the Bernie movement, which seemed so close to actually actualizing some of this stuff and winning, that pivoting to a model that has more longer term horizons and that isn't about those kind of clean political victories is a difficult shift. But there's something exciting about it as well. The idea of having a physical space I find to be very exciting. With the rent being as high as it is, I don't know how these left organizations are going to start to be able to achieve it.
No, you're right. It's a daunting task.
I mean, we can't afford studio space. I'm sitting here in my kitchen and we're thinking about, oh gosh, how do we get meeting spaces?
I've been having conversations with my co-host Jason Miles talking about how we need to find a way to get a consortium of all of the lefty podcasters to come together and have some type of, I don't know, create a union, I don't know what it is, or some type of mechanism where we are working together to get the message out. I really hate internecine left media beef. I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah, well.
I know you've been a victim of your share. I wish we could get beyond that because it's so few of us who understand, who have that clarity to see what the problems are. I just wish that we would be able to work together and just get over this personal little myopia of nonsense and just be like, yo, listen, man, let's take it to the system for real, and try to make it happen. I applaud what you do here. How do you keep your balance in terms of yourself? I mean, you're talking about me. I mean, you're at a higher echelon of the game than I am. So
I am in only two modes, either podcasting or reading and consuming media that is necessary for me to be able to podcast or co-host or whatever well, or alternatively binge watching streaming programs. There are only two modes. If I'm not doing this, I am mainlining trash from Netflix straight into my cerebellum.
What is a love life? What's the problem?
Pascal, well, that's a third mode, but mostly we just watch TV as well. To bring it back to Haiti just for a little before we wrap, though.
Yes, please.
I did want to ask you, I mean, just today, as we're recording, it'll be a couple of days ago for people who are listening to it, the UN just unanimously passes sanctions on one of the key gang leaders. I don't know if you caught any of this. And I wonder what you think of those kinds of interventions that stop short of military intervention. I know that the left, broadly speaking, is quite critical of sanctions. And I wonder if the valence of this is any different for you because it's targeting a gang leader.
Sanctions against a gang leader, how does that work exactly? I mean, you're going to stop them from being able to buy toilet tissue? I mean, what exactly, how does this function in terms of reality? I would be more interested in them sanctioning the individuals that are financing him. So when I hear sanctions in Haiti, my first reaction is that, are they trying to sanction the government of Haiti, or are they trying to sanction the Haitian people? Because for me, this is just a door that can lead to more economic suffering for Haitians, as opposed to trying to address the damage that he may be doing individually.
So, and I asked you this earlier, and I'm not sure that we ever really, I went off on a frolic in detour. I'm sure that was my fault. But how do you see the situation resolving? This is obviously not an argument for U.S. intervention. I'm just trying to, for people who might be wondering, well, intervention is bad, but there are people in Haiti that are being terrorized, kidnapped, et cetera, by these paramilitary troops. There are people who are fleeing the country. What gives? Do you think that there is a legitimate possibility that a people's movement is able to overcome the gangs?
I mean, that would be optimal. I would like to see that for sure. But if we cannot achieve that, then at least getting the civil society political actors who are from the political parties that we know exist in the country, as well as the judiciary, as well as the institutional mechanisms, can we form a provisional coalition government with strict mandate to have elections in 1 year period of time to govern on that mandate, and at the same time find a way to buttress some type of internal Haitian police force to deal with the gangs and arm them and subsidize them with international capital. In other words, if the Haitian nation state cannot finance this internal police force, maybe we should at least see them being paid by international actors, but under the auspices of the Haitian nation state, and to deal with the gangs under the guise of trying to make sure we can get elections within the year.
I mean, it just seems tricky. I mean, we're dealing with this in Ukraine right now, right? There's this idea that we can provide resources and provide money and provide weapons for democratic, in quotation marks, political ends. You know, we've seen the difficulty of tracking where that money goes, mixed reports on how benevolent, shall we say, the political interests of the groups that we're funding are. Obviously, the ongoing conversation about the prevalence of Nazis, however great or little you think that that is within the Ukrainian army. Is there any kind of support, as it were, that's external to the country that you think is really well tailored to be truly benevolent, I guess?
That's the point, is that there's not a long history of having these types of endeavors being effective in terms of trying to bring forth stability within the Haitian people at all. So my trust is low, but at the same time, I am willing to understand why there's a demand that something be done. But at the same time, I just don't trust the West, the United States, and the international actors that have tried to play that role in the past being the ones that are doing so. I'm more interested in seeing capacity of civil society coming to a position where they develop some type of interim government that is interested in making sure that within a year we have a democratic election in the country and actually have a transition to some type of functioning governance.
But what are Henri's incentives to want to push for that?
The State Department telling him that he has to agree to it.
And is that what the State Department is doing? I just see that Linda Thomas Greenfield just made remarks to the UN earlier today, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, who, fun fact, was in some diplomatic position when we lived in Kenya, and her daughter went to school with us. They were one of the only other Black American kids in the school. But she just made a statement talking about this resolution. This resolution is an initial answer to the calls for help from the Haitian people. I've seen a lot of protesters saying specifically that they don't want U.S. involvement, but we'll table that for a second. They want us to take action against criminal actors, including gangs and their financiers, who have been undermining stability and expanding poverty in their vibrant society. In response, this council sanctioned one of the country's most notorious gang leaders, a gang leader whose actions have directly contributed to the humanitarian crisis that has caused so much pain and suffering to the people of Haiti. We are sending a clear message to the bad actors that are holding Haiti hostage. The international community will not stand idly by while you wreak havoc on the Haitian people. Sanctions are at their most effective when they are targeted specifically toward bad actors and allow humanitarian aid to reach civilian populations. The resolution we adopted today accomplishes both these objectives. We have also worked to incorporate clear, measurable, and well-defined methods to periodically review the efficacy of these sanctions. And I thank my colleagues, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, this is absurd. We're talking about sanctions on a country like Haiti at this particular moment. I mean, do we really think this is going to be targeted towards an individual? How do you apply sanctions to one person?
It does feel either that it is so expansive as to be harmful or just so narrow as to be ineffective.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? All right. Well, we'll continue following this story. I really appreciate you joining me to talk about it, Pascal. I've been really wanting to get into the weeds of this. I know that sometimes foreign policy conversations get short shrift on the left generally and news cycles, generally speaking, because it can be very overwhelming to try to engage with the whole history of a country that we've been so ill-informed about in the United States. But your breadth of knowledge and historical perspective really enrich these conversations, and I really enjoy having you as a guest, so thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Can you let our audience know where they can find you and more of your great work?
This is Revolution Podcast and all your relevant podcast sites. You can go to Black Agenda Report and at Newsweek, having my name, Pascal Robert.
And I will indulge, Pascal, I don't mean to shut down your inquiries on the more romantic nature. I've been wanting to have a follow-up episode to our dating episodes that we did last year. And if you're willing, maybe you should come back and be a panelist for that. And then we can have a probing conversation about love, life, and all of these kinds of things. I think that could be fun.
That will be interesting.
All right. Well, to the audience, thank you as always for listening, and keep the faith.
I'm in love with Lady Haiti, and when they call me to the Grammys, I wrap the flag all around me, cause I'm in love with Lady Haiti. I'm so in love they call me crazy. I left the music with the Haiti, even though they try to stop me. I seen and the earth shake right under her feet. She told me, baby, don't weep. I'm sitting on Oprah, tears in my eyes. I knew your story ever since a kid. Developed a crush when I heard what you did. 1804, you made my people free. You the reason I feel I could be anything. She in the white.